Tuyết Mai xin trân trọng kính chào quý vị. Kính thưa quý vị, hôm nay Tuyết Mai hân hạnh gửi đến quý vị phóng sự đặc biệt lễ kỷ niệm Ngày Nhân quyền cho Việt Nam được tổ chức vào lúc 11 giờ trưa ngày 11 tháng 5 năm 2017 tại một phòng hội ở Quốc hội Hoa Kỳ, Washington DC. Kính mời quý vị theo dõi một vài hình ảnh của chúng tôi hôm nay.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is my honor and privilege to represent the organizing committee for the 23rd Vietnam Human Rights Day.
What so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming.
Công dân ơi, mà đến thành giới cả công dân ơi, mà làm cho khói mờ thoát gần tàn phá vé vàng, đời sống xứng danh nghìn năm dòng sông lạc hồng.
The Vietnamese American community of Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia Metro cannot look away while our family, friends are held political prisoner in Vietnam. Their crime? To simply speak out against the Vietnamese Communist government. We will hear from key leaders who have and continue to fight for human rights in Vietnam. And yet through their leadership, political will, and with not moral courage, that we have such tremendous support here on the Capitol Hill. Thank you for being here to share, to remember the Vietnam Human Rights Day. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Mr. Scott Busby.
Deputy Assistant Secretary của Bureau of Democracy and Human Rights and Labor, Department of State.
We've already had a visit by the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, he's a double-hatted official, to the U.S., where he met with Secretary of State Tillerson. More prominently, President Trump has now announced his intention to travel to Vietnam for the APEC leaders meeting in November. In the near future, my boss, DRL Acting Assistant Secretary Virginia Bennett, will lead our delegation later this month to Hanoi for our 21st annual U.S.-Vietnam Human Rights Dialogue. Minister of Vietnam will be visiting Washington. All of these high-level visits give us opportunities to press the government of Vietnam for more progress on human rights. Now, the number and variety of these meetings represent the wide set of interests we have with Vietnam, from trade to education to regional security, international law, and health. As we strengthen our relationship across these many issues and in terms of the ties between our peoples, we continue to emphasize to the government of Vietnam that progress on human rights is critical for our relationship to reach its fullest potential. We're particularly concerned this past year with harassment and arrests of individuals peacefully expressing their views or simply practicing their religion. Last year, for instance, we saw the arrest of at least 6 peaceful activists, including blogger Nhan Quyen, or Mother Mushroom, as she is commonly known. She was arrested last October for writing about her concerns over human rights abuses, the degradation of the environment, and corruption, and has still not received her day in court. This year, we've also seen the arrest of 8 peaceful activists. We also continue to receive reports of harassment and temporary detention of a wide range of human rights defenders, including youth and bloggers seeking to raise awareness about environmental justice in the wake of the tragic Formosa toxic waste spill last year. Of course, we remain concerned about a number of prisoners of conscience in Vietnam. People like Pastor Nhan Quyen Cho, imprisoned for his beliefs since 2012, lawyer Nguyen Van Dai, who has been allegedly beaten and is still detained without a trial yet. He's been detained since 2015. I should note that I have met with him on 2 occasions on my visits to Vietnam. Each time I am so impressed by his courage and willingness to speak out despite the consequences, and we continue to press the government of Vietnam to release him. And lastly, Tran Anh Kim, who is serving a very harsh 13-year sentence only for his advocacy of democracy. At the upcoming Human Rights Dialogue, the U.S. government will repeat our call for the release of all prisoners of conscience in Vietnam. And we will call on the Vietnamese government to allow all individuals to freely express their political views, both online and offline, without fear of retribution. We will also continue to call on Vietnam to eliminate the very vague national security laws under which many of these arrests and convictions take place. Another concerning development on human rights in Vietnam over the past year has been the intensification of the government's efforts to restrict material on the internet, in particular as to YouTube and Facebook, which the government deems as toxic or politically sensitive. We still see reports of harassment and detention of religious leaders and their followers. And so, at our upcoming Human Rights Dialogue, we will also call on the Vietnamese government to protect the religious freedom of all of its citizens, including for members of both registered and unregistered religious groups. Perhaps the most important trend I want to discuss relates to Vietnam's ongoing legal reform efforts, intended to bring its laws in line with its 2013 Constitution and its international human rights commitments. We have been encouraged by Vietnam's commitment to making these reforms, including its decision to sign human rights treaties such as the UN Convention Against Torture and the Convention on the Rights of People of Disabilities.
Thượng nghị sĩ Nhan Quyen của Texas.
It become the world's second largest prison for citizens. The punishments for telling the truth are extreme and severe. For example, one 5-year sentence was given to Nhan Quyen Cho Vn, a citizen journalist who created an independent news website. What was his crime? Questioning the government. His assistant was also sentenced to 3 years in prison after what was described as an abnormal and unfair trial in Hanoi. Society cannot hold its leaders accountable without a free and fair press, and without accountability, a country cannot represent the needs of its citizens. Fortunately, here in America, we take pride in having a diverse set of opinions that are well represented across all spectrums of the media. And because of this freedom, we have the responsibility to help Vietnam rise in the ranks. Last year I introduced, and I intend to introduce again, the Vietnam Human Rights Sanctions Act that would impose travel sanctions and restrictions on Vietnamese nationals who are complicit in human rights abuses against their fellow citizens. I plan on reintroducing that legislation soon. But now is not the time to be silent. We must all take a stand, and I know that's why we're all here today. I was pleased to see that later this fall, President Trump will be visiting Vietnam to discuss security issues, trade, and freedom of navigation with respect to the South China Sea. I'll continue to urge the President and his administration to use that opportunity to reiterate the United States' dedication to human rights and to tell the Vietnamese government that there are conditions to its entry onto the world stage and entering into improved economic and security ties with the United States, and those involve how it treats its own citizens. Certainly we have shared interests with Vietnam, including growth of our bilateral trade agreement and countering Chinese military power and aggressive moves in the South China Sea. But we can't continue to turn a blind eye to what goes on within Vietnamese borders. That means calling on Vietnam to release all political prisoners, respect human rights, and embrace more democratic ideals which we all hold dear. So as we continue to grow and improve our relations with Vietnam, we need to remain mindful of our values and the protection of human rights. That's the only way our relationship will become stronger, leading to positive change for both countries and the broader region.
An appreciation of your unwavering leadership for human rights.
Please welcome Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey.
The unified voice of the Vietnamese community serves as a necessary conscience for Congress. And that is not just Congress, but the White House, the State Department. When you speak, we listen. When you speak with such authority, and I just got the most recent report, and I think that gives us, and all of us who try as best we can to make policy and to stand up for those who are disenfranchised and persecuted, a better roadmap as to how to go forward. So thank you for that. Your voice is needed now more than ever. The new administration is just taking shape. My hope is that we can have a profound impact on the prioritization of human rights. There's much talk about, there are obviously hot spots all over the world, North Korea being among many of those that just cry out and beg remedy. At the core of it all has to be human rights and fundamental freedoms. And when we speak that truth to power and never let that slip or become compartmentalized so that it's not part of the main dialogue, I think we do a grave injustice to the cause of human rights. Nguyen Van Dai, who I met in 2005 in Hanoi, and then a year later when he was here in the United States, obviously he continues to be held. His wife last year, day before today, or May 10th I should say, testified at one of my hearings on Vietnam human rights abuses, and she was spectacular in her courage and in her defense for her husband. Yes, we need to talk on a variety of issues, but at the core of it all, like I said before, are human rights. There is a connection between freedom and fair trade, between the rule of law and international security. There's a direct connection between the United States' power and prosperity and the advance of justice, human rights, and the rule of law. U.S. leadership is required to demonstrate that principles and interests are not, I say again, not incompatible, but necessary for better relations. No government that represses its own people and restricts fundamental freedoms can be a trusted ally of the United States. No government that censors the internet or tortures and jails dissidents can be trusted with generous trade or security benefits. The president must make sure the Vietnamese government understands that major improvements are necessary for a strong and healthy partnership between our two countries. He should make clear that the further expansion of trade benefits and security partnerships are conditioned on significant, verifiable, and irreversible improvements in human rights and democratic freedoms in Vietnam. Totally compatible and works synergistically, I believe, with the Global Magnitsky Act to hold individuals to account. You torture a religious person or a cleric or anyone in Vietnam or any other country, we hold you responsible, not just your country. It also creates a comprehensive religious prisoners list so that we start really chronicling who these people are and have an actionable list that our president, our secretary of state, all the various people at state, and hopefully congressmen and women and senators, particularly when they travel, can pick up that list and say, what about Nguyen Van Dai? What about the Venerable Thich Quang Do and all the other people who have been so horribly mistreated? And I think that kind of specific mention of individuals will make a huge difference, and someday Vietnam will be free. God bless you.
Miss Liu, please. And I'm so proud to represent Radio Free Asia, which, despite the enormous obstacles that the Vietnamese government throws at us, we continue to deliver unfettered news and information to the Vietnamese people, the people that seek and deserve this information. But most of all, I'm privileged to share this occasion with all of you. I'm so inspired by Scott and the senator and the congressman, and obviously the deep commitment to the human rights situation in Vietnam, which is in such sad shape right now. It's your unwavering support of RFA that matters. It matters to us, and it matters to the people in Vietnam. Was raised before that make Vietnam the second biggest jailer of citizen journalists in the world. This fact and these cases not only demonstrate how shamelessly
Ông Lê Văn.
Must continue. I urge each and every one of you to keep your focus and contribute any and all means that you can offer to this crucial issue. Thank you.
It is very important bill as well, and that is the Fine Wolf International Religious Freedom Act. The combination of those two acts will provide us with a number of tools. On the one hand, there are sanctions against the entire regime for those governments that grossly, egregiously violate freedom of religion or belief. On the other hand, the Magnitsky Act would allow us to recommend individual government officials who committed or involved in gross violation of human rights.
Thượng nghị sĩ Thanh Hải from Canada.
Risk weakening the commitment and engagement in the quest for freedom and democracy. Otherwise, we will risk leaving the field.
Thưa quý vị, vừa xem qua một vài hình ảnh lễ kỷ niệm Ngày Nhân quyền cho Việt Nam được tổ chức vào lúc 11 giờ trưa ngày 11 tháng 5 năm 2017 tại một phụng hội trong Quốc hội Hoa Kỳ ở Washington DC. Chương trình phóng sự của chúng tôi tới đây chấm dứt. Trước mai xin hẹn gặp lại quý vị trong chương trình phóng sự đặc biệt kỳ tới.
To coordinate and support for human rights in Vietnam.